Hey guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is back again to give you guys another anime and manga live stream discussion. This one is actually on a manga series I did do a blind reaction to first, but then let's just say life caught up with me and I've just been fairly busy. And the truth be told, when it comes to this stream in particular, regarding Chainsaw Man, originally I was going to do uh individual volume reviews as like a lead up to Chainsaw Man Part 2, but a l- just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up on what's been going on with me outside of this, one of my family members unfortunately was suffering a lot, and then for like the latter month of June, and then last Monday, we found out they passed away, which was it's unfortunate, and it sucks that things like this have to happen. And for anyone who's been following my Twitter, y'all know the updates on what's been going on there. That's why when I made the post on was it Tuesday or Wednesday, I think, that I was going to be on hiatus for a while for the channels because I didn't know, what needed to be done, and I needed to be there for my family, and I'm still doing that. It's just that a lot of the post funeral stuff has been dealt with. I'll say that a lot of the post funeral stuff has been like taken care of, and it's mainly just like little small prayers that need to be done, and that's not going to be until like later on in the day. So I figured since I have enough time, even though I'm still kind of going through grief, it's something this person once told me. No matter how much grief we're going through, life is still going to go on. And in saying that, we just gotta press on. We just gotta look ahead. Have the moment to grieve, have the moment to feel, remorse for the individual who you lost. But always remember that. No matter what, never forget about that. And that's been true for me for a lot of my family members that are no longer here today. And it's it's a heavy subject matter. I'll just say that, but that's just to keep it brief on what's been going down on my end of things. Now, once again, to talk about Twitter, I did mention how this stream could potentially be about an hour and 30 minutes. I'm not gonna say that's gonna be 100% accurate, depending on how the conversation goes. But no, the stream could be an hour and 30 minutes. It could be an hour. It could even be like 40 minutes. We'll just have to see how the stream goes, how the discussion goes. And I'll just say this right now. For anyone that wants to, just chime in and share your thoughts, feel free because y'all know these streams are always fun whenever, like conversations going on and I'm engaging with you guys. Like it's always fun to do that. But we're almost 4 minutes in, and you guys are probably sitting there going like, "Lucky Cheat, just get to the point. Get to the point of talking about Chainsaw Man." And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I've actually got this listed out in four specific bullet points. Well, four bullet points. You could argue six because the second one I kind of combined. You kind of chop it down into three segments. But I'll just talk about my first point right now, which is how I got into Chainsaw Man. And a Chainsaw Man, I've always kind of known about for the longest time. Like even when I was doing um live stream reactions to manga series like Samurai 8 at the time before it got canceled, Eden Zero, um what else was there? Attack on Titan, Tokyo Ghoul. Like I've known about it. It's not like I haven't known about the situation with Chainsaw Man. In fact, I'll even take it a step further and say this. that when I got into Chainsaw Man, the manga was already finished. That's the big thing that drove my attention to Chainsaw Man was I was hearing about the popularity. It was already getting a lot of attention, and then very similarly, since I brought up Tokyo Ghoul, we hear the announcement that it's ending, and it's like, I'm like, didn't this manga just start? Like I was like, hold on, this manga is just barely 100 chapters in. It's already done. Now, again, you can interpret it in a lot of ways to where, okay, the author feels like this is the end of the story. And I perfectly respect that because to me, as an author, it's not about the number of chapters, the number of volumes you have in your story. It's how long the story is from beginning to end. So when I heard Chainsaw Man was ending, I was like, all right, that's actually pretty interesting. And that's what drove my attention to Chainsaw Man was just that announcement. And it was kind of reminiscent to Tokyo Ghoul because a little bit of a history lesson on Tokyo Ghoul for anyone who's here. That series ended, and people were like, "What's going on? Like, what are we gonna get? Like, there's no way we can just end things right here, right now. Like, it would have felt like it got canceled, but then we found out about Tokyo Ghoul Re, and that's kind of the feeling I got with Chainsaw Man with the announcement. Now, again, this is coming from me not reading the manga or anything. So I was like, this could be a Tokyo Ghoul situation where it's like you have part one and part one's done, and then you'll get more Chainsaw Man, but it'll be like part two. And it's funny how that correlates to now. But that's how I got into Chainsaw Man. I tried reading the manga at first, and I read like the first few chapters and thought it was like, all right, it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. But then around that point in time, I was also dealing with like my final years in college. So I really didn't have a lot of time to like delve into like new series and whatnot. Then the anime trailer came out, saw the anime trailer, and I was like, that's actually pretty cool. And I remembered I was like, I did try reading this one time. Let me try reading the manga again and see what happens. And I want to say by the time the anime trailer came out, it was volume 8, I think that dropped 8 or 9. No, not even 8 or 9. I can't even remember. But it was sometime last year. I know that for a fact. So then started collecting the manga for Chainsaw Man, and I was like, you know what? If it's only 11 volumes, I'll just wait for each of the volumes to come out, and then I'll just read them like that. And reading the manga, oh my god, I'm still kind of surprised it was a Shonen Jump series because the stuff that goes on in the manga for Chainsaw Man, if you told me that was a seinen, I would have been like, "Oh yeah, I could totally see the seinen vibes." Because a series like that in Jump, it's insane. Now, granted, we're also coming off in Jump to where we have now Jujutsu Kaisen, which by itself is already kind of like, whoa, okay. But it's not like we've seen shonen series do things like this before. Because again, you look at Attack on Titan, and many people were like, "Yo, Attack on Titan is shonen? Nah, get out of here! That ain't no shonen." Up until the last few chapters, but you know, that's besides the point. We had series like Jujutsu Kaisen, a very great series, underrated series for me personally was Opar Center. You read that series, and it's got its shonen tropes, but there are times in Opar Center where you're reading and you're like, dude, that looks like it could be a seinen series too. It has that sense. But that being said, that's essentially how I got into Chainsaw Man was the announcement that the manga was coming to an end, just picking up the volumes and then reading it through that. That's the very short rundown version of how I got into Chainsaw Man. Now, this is going to be where the fun part kicks in, and that's going to be my favorite moments, favorite arcs, and favorite characters. And you could also equate that to favorite female characters too. But my favorite moments in Chainsaw Man, oh my god, there's so many I can name at the top of my head. The very first chapter of Chainsaw Man, I think is still pretty iconic. Learning about Denji, his backstory, the stuff he had to go through, meeting Makima, like that foundation. That sets up everything. If I had to pick my favorite moment, I would probably say just that initial first chapter because that first chapter really sets the tone of what the manga's about. And it's not something I could say about a lot of series. The only other series I could think of that have done that for me been Tokyo Ghoul, Attack on Titan. Naruto had that too, I would argue. But is there another series I can name at the top of my head? Maybe not at this point, but those are the three that really stick to my mind. It's Tokyo Ghoul, Opart Hunter, and Jujutsu Kaisen Zero. I would say Jujutsu Kaisen Zero for sure was definitely something that really got to my attention, and that's how I would view Chainsaw Man in this phase. Now, if we're talking a specific moment outside of like say the very first chapter for Denji, obviously him meeting Makima again, that sets the foundation up for that in particular. But I would probably say him meeting Reze was something. Him meeting Reze, it's a lot of like the character interactions. The first time he meets Reze, the first time he meets Power, Aki, um, and just seeing the progression of like where Denji goes. Because you okay, and I say progression because if you look at it, it's like okay, it doesn't seem like Denji grows that much throughout the story. I would argue he kind of does. It's subtle. I'm not going to say that it's one of those things where it just sits in it like sits out like a sore thumb. It's one of those things where you have to like, like analyze the body language, analyze the dialogue, analyze like the mental thought process, which in Denji's case, it's like, okay, there's not much growth in terms of his mental thought process. Up until you could argue like the very end of the story, because when you see how things go for Denji at the end, when which by the way, I want to say this right now. Anyone who's watching this, full on spoilers. I'm gonna say this right now. If anyone here is curious and haven't read Chainsaw Man, just to give y'all a heads up, like I'm 13 minutes and I haven't even said this. This is gonna be full on spoilers. So I would say just go ahead and take your leave because I don't want to ruin this experience because I really, really don't. Chainsaw Man is an incredible series. But that being said, let me go ahead and just continue talking about Chainsaw because the whole reflection Denji goes through at the very, very end, I think is aside from the beginning, is one of the most. uh, You could say it's one of the most tragic things about Denji. You could say is his personality and him lusting over Makima. You could say these are all traits of Denji that kind of like shows his insecurities and whatnot. But when you get to the end of the manga and you see his thought process, it's I would say it's like this. It's like seeing a little kid. You're seeing a little kid go through a phase. And then at the end of Chainsaw Man, you kind of see how he kind of grows up. Again, it's not something I would say you could easily point out. But again, through body language, through little key phrases and dialogue, and I say very, very little key phrases, it really, really speaks a lot for the stuff Denji goes through as a character. Oh, let's not forget what happens to Power. Oh my god, the stuff with Power, especially when Makima's there and Power opens the door. Boom! Like that by itself is already a mental fuck. It again going back to Tokyo, it very much reminds me of Kaneki. You know where he has this huge crush on Rize, and then his whole world turns upside down. You could say it's kind of similar to that with Denji, where the entirety of part one is essentially his backstory, and it's incredible. It honestly is. Which favorite moments? I do like the conversation between him and Reze when it came to school. That I think was probably one of the more wholesome moments I think the series had. Was when he was in the classroom and him and Reze were like doing the classroom introductions, them just like playing along with that. I thought that was actually kind of cute. And then the double cross, or the quote unquote double cross, if you will. I knew something was up with Reze. At first, I was like, she just like happens to show up in front of Denji. Something has to happen. There's always something behind Reze we don't know about. And come when we see what kind of devil she is, it's like, yeah, okay. It's like we know. And I just gotta say, I'm actually kind of at a loss for words right now because not the control devil, because that's Makima. And I'm blinking on this too. Reze, I would say, if I remember correctly, the bomb devil, right? Well, when that revelation hits, when you see her as the bomb devil, and all of that, I remember I had to take a step back and just say, I saw it coming, but it still left me shook, to say the least. It still left me shook. But I don't think it left me as shook as, say, what happened to Power. Or what Denji does to Makima. Like in the final chapter, when he's like, "Oh, so that's what you taste like, Makima." I was like, "Dude, that's insane!" Like he literally cooked her. And I remember reading that, seeing that last bit of the chapter, and I was just like, "Yo, Tatsuki Fujimoto, he did what I think a lot of mangakas. I can't say a lot of mangakas, but at the very least, a lot of shonen mangakas wouldn't have the balls to do. I want to say that right now. I don't think there a lot of mangakas would be able to pull off what Fujimoto did. Shonen mangakas. The only exception I could maybe make is Isayama with Attack on Titan, pre five pre 5 last chapters, and then well, uh, Gege Akutami from Jujutsu Kaisen I get to do this too. So there's a few exceptions I can name on the top of my head, but there's that. Now I'm trying to remember if there's another moment I could think of that was my favorite from the manga. Let's see. I talked about the whole scene with Denji and Rize. That was really cool. The relationships between him and Power, not from a shipping something. No, as soon as somebody mentions relationships, it's like, oh, shipping. No, it's not that. But the dynamic Denji has with Power, with Aki, characters like he's not exactly super cool with that person. In Power's case, he's a little bit more reserved. But you see throughout the course of the story what those relationships meant to him. And especially Power, because the second he sees Power get her head blown off, and that moment where she tells Denji to come find her, like that had me. I remember I was sitting there and I was just like, yo, oh my god. She was like, "Yo, Denji, but when the time comes, I want you to come try and find me." And again, some people could view that as a romantic sense. I think it could go either way. You could view it as something platonic or something romantic. Either way. But yeah, favorite moment. I think that would be at the moment. That's all I could think of for favorite moments. Favorite arc, though. Mm, I think for me, a lot of like the early arcs, like I think they're great arcs. They're really great arcs. But personally, for me though, I would say the Bomb Devil arc is kind of where things really went in the high gear for me personally, because kind of going off from what I mentioned, like him getting that connection with Reze, and then just everything regarding that. You could kind of argue that's kind of where it kind of starts with Denji, and like the way his character starts to shift in that respect. But yeah, like I said, the Bomb Devil arc for sure is where I would say it's one of my favorite arcs. The close contender I could say is the final arc of part one. The final arc by itself, you could make an argument to say that is above the Bomb Devil arc because yeah, the shit Makima pulled. People want me to give my thoughts on this, and I'll keep it brief with Makima. That whole revelation was surprising because all this time you're thinking Makima is saying some of these things to Denji. She's being polite. And this kind of goes back to what I said before. It's all about the dialogue and it comes to the body language. And looking back on Makima as a character, there's a lot of points and cues that Fujimoto does with Makima, with the way how she addresses Denji, and the way she goes about, you know, expressing certain things. And this is something Denji points out, is that she was never really, maybe it wasn't even like fully stated, but it's one of those cases where Makima was never really infatuated with Denji himself. It was more so the Chainsaw Devil. That was what her fixation was on. She didn't really see Denji for who he was. All she saw was the Chainsaw Devil with Pochita. And by the way, what happens to Pochita too is something else entirely. Oh my god. I You want me to cry for a character that I felt sad about. What happens to Pochita? Like that shit was gonna sad. I'm not gonna lie. I was sitting there. I was just like, "Yo, Pochita, man, god damn." And I do like the callback to Pochita. Um, and like the little like, and we get Pochita very frequently throughout like each of the arcs too. And like I can't say it's like very frequently, but you see little instances where Denji kind of thinks back to Pochita, and especially towards the final arc with Makima's explanation and the whole connection to the Chainsaw Devil and how the Chainsaw Devil kind of took a different form in the case of Pochita, and that was fascinating. And it shows how Fujimoto was able to kind of like tie all the pieces back together. Everything that was set up from the very beginning is able to kind of find its way back into the ending of what's it called? The ending of the arc by itself. But again, It's really an eye opener. I know I'm not doing. I know I'm not really doing this room justice. With some of my explanations here, but it's a general discussion. So I'm just going, raw, no notes, nothing. I'm just going straight from the heart, straight with what I am, talking about. That's it. And then a lot of my streams are usually like that, where it's really just like little basic bullet points I'm talking about, and I'm just going straight from there. To where it's not primarily scripted. There's like little bullet points I have in like what I'm going to be talking about, but it makes these discussions feel organic, and it makes it feel more honest, if you will. It doesn't feel like, okay, here's something that needs to be talked about because it's for the sake of contention. That's not what. That's not the reason why I'm talking about these certain things. I'm just talking about things that just stick out to me personally, and that's just that's how I've always been. From the very very beginning. But yeah, if I had to say favorite arcs, I would say it's a tie between the Bomb Devil arc and the Control Devil arc, without a doubt. Which and now gets us into favorite characters. Now here's the thing. Denji's cool. I can't say he's my favorite. And I'm only saying that right now because his story is not done. Knowing that we're getting a part two, to me says Denji's story is not finished. So if I'm looking at it like this, he's definitely one of the more interesting characters. But if I had to pick a favorite character, and that's tough by itself too, it really is. Um, I would probably say Power. I do like Power as a character. Again, her relationship with Denji kind of have this little approach where they don't exactly get along, but then over the course of the story, you kind of see how they become close. Again, whether or not you view it as platonic or non-platonic, that's up to you guys. I kind of view it as more of a brother sister dynamic. That's the view I see from Power and Denji. And again, her character, the stuff that happens to her, it's tragic. It sucks, but I do like what her character has to offer, and she is definitely one of the more standout characters in Chainsaw Man, without a doubt. Then there's also uh, Aki. Aki's a really cool character, also. But if I had to pick a guy character, and there really isn't really a lot I can think of at this point in time, maybe I will shoot for Denji. Like, I'll say for the moment, I know I'm contradicting myself by saying that. I'll say Denji, while not my favorite character, he's definitely one of the characters I'm really interested in. Very much like another character that I know has been getting a lot of talk and a lot of attraction since the ending of the manga. And that's Kobeni. Here's the thing, every character has had their purpose in Chainsaw Man. From Power to Aki to Makima to Reze, um, characters like Beam, characters like Hirokazu, Madoka, Himeno. A lot of these characters, even characters like Angel, they've all had their moments and they've all served their purpose. But here's the thing though, Kobeni is one of those characters where you don't really expect a whole lot out of, yet she's one of the surviving characters we get at the end of part one. And everyone noticed that. You have a lot of these characters not exactly, I can't say not exactly holding up, but they're not there in the picture. by the time you get to the end of the series, except for Kobeni, Denji, and a few other, and I want to say Captain Kishibe, Kishi, Kishibe, yeah, Kishibe, yeah, yeah, he's there. So you have a few characters that are still there, but the fact that Kobeni's there, what that's telling me is Fujimoto has some ideas for Kobeni and her story arc. And the interaction she has with Denji, I thought it very much reminded me of the conversation Aaron and Astoria had from Attack on Titan. More so the manga than the anime, but there's that whole conversation that Aaron and Astoria has in the cabin. And that conversation you get after Denji kind of has his whole little reflection, I think speaks a lot. And it could be something Fujimoto could go into if we're to talk about ships and whatnot. Now, I'm not going to say that it's a ship that is the end all be all for Chainsaw Man because that's not what Chainsaw Man's about. But I'm just saying, if that's the direction Fujimoto wants to go in, that door's open. But if I had to pick, it's either Reze or if I were to pick between the two, love interest for Denji, which I don't think is going to even be a huge focal point of part two, either going to be Reze or Kobeni. If we want to throw in a third contender, we could throw in Power 2, depending on how you guys feel about it. But that's kind of what I would have to say. And I know there's a lot of people who are super big on the whole Power and Makima debate. I'll say this: I'm a Power guy. Power, I love her personality. I think she's kind of quirky. I think she's kind of funny, and like I said, I like that dynamic she has with Denji. It's funny and it's kind of cute too. In whatever way you guys want to take it. Now, as far as Makima goes, I don't hate her character. In fact, I think as an antagonist, she's really cool. But the fan base, and I know the fan base, all the bargain and scream people were doing, like apparently an Anime Expo. A lot of fans were like they were there was like a bark fest going on. And when I heard about that, I was just like, yo, these guys are simping for Yo, these cats are simping for Makima. Now look, Makima has a good figure. Look, make no mistake about that. But let's be real. It is a character. That's one thing to say. And two, Makima don't give two shits. That's the big thing I think we need to take into account here is Makima does not give two shits about people about individuals. She views them as assets, as puppets, if you will. You do this, you do this, you do this, and they follow orders. That's exactly how Makima's character is designed. And again, it's fascinating when we get to her arc and get to that revelation that oh shit, there's this, and her character does serve a purpose because again, it ties to Denji, and you could kind of say Denji represents how a lot of people feel, where he was simping heavy for Makima, but then at the end of the story, he realizes, oh shit, I was being used, I was being manipulated. And like I said, I think that's a very, very big key moment for Denji, where it's gonna push his character in a huge way, especially with Nayuta. The fact that he's gonna kind of be like this big brother, fatherly figure to this young girl who is the new control devil, I think is gonna speak a lot about Denji as a character and his growth. Because up until this point, it's what I said. Denji's kind of like a little kid when we see him at the beginning of the story. He wants things done a certain way. He has goals and whatnot. And then when you see him at the end and you see him being approached by Kishibe and him being tasked with raising this little girl Nayuta, who's the new control devil, and to make sure she doesn't fall under the same circumstances as Makima, I think that's really gonna shape Denji's character into something great. Very, I think we could see it very similarly to how Kaneki ended up in Tokyo Ghoul, going from Tokyo Ghoul to Tokyo Re, and very much so. You could also view it the same way you could see Aaron, the very start of Attack on Titan to the very end of it. I say very to the time skip of Attack on Titan. Again, pre 5 chapters because oh my god, that by itself is I don't even know. But there's a lot there for Denji, for sure. There's a lot there. I'll say this: depending on how part two goes, Denji could end up as one of the best, and maybe even one. I could say he could become one of the more iconic shonen protagonists. He could. That potential's there. It all depends on what Fujimoto plans to do in part two. I think that's a very key thing we can talk about. But that's kind of what I have to say for my favorite moments, favorite arcs, and favorite characters. Now let me go ahead and talk about my expectations for the anime, which, considering it's Mappa and how they've tackled Attack on Titan, I know there's a lot of people debating about how Attack on Titan's final season's been handled. Even more so with the second half of the final season, because it's second half of final season. I'm sorry, second half of part two, because now we're getting part three, and it's going to lead to a whole other can of worms I don't want to get into at this point in time. But reception's kind of mixed because you have Attack on Titan the final season, and then you have JJK. JJK is fantastic. Oh my god, the care that went into Jujutsu Kaisen as an adaptation from the music, from the animation, the fluidity, the art style, it really sticks out. And again, Chainsaw Man is super big, super popular amongst the anime manga community. And here's the thing: the only thing we have to base off of right now are key visuals and trailers. Which, based off the trailers, is going to be CG like elements in the anime, and I think that could work. I'll say that I think there are things about that could actually work. It's all about how you present it, and I'm just going to say this: everyone's looking at Chainsaw Man right now. If you mess up on the anime, people are gonna come at you with pitchforks, Mappa. That's all I want to say. If there is even one thing that messes up with the final season of Attack on Titan with Chainsaw Man, people are gonna come after you. So you gotta make it work. That's all I'm gonna say. There's a lot for Chainsaw Man we could talk about when it comes to the anime. I'll say this: do I think we could tackle everything in one season? You could, theoretically. You would have to rush a lot, though. I would say there's a lot I think you would have to skip over though when it comes to an anime adaptation for Chainsaw Man. And some people could say, but it's only 97 chapters, like Chi. Like it wouldn't be that impossible. That's true, but if it were me and my stance on an anime adaptation, I would say this: do season one for Chainsaw Man, and then have season one end at the Bomb Devil. That I think would be the perfect ending point for a season one. And then for season two, we tackle the last 3 arcs of part 1. The International Assassins arc, the Gun Devil arc, and the Control Devil arc. Those 3. I think you can do a lot within that time frame, especially because if we're looking at it, the intro arc's only 4 chapters, and then everything after that actually, even then, because a lot of the arcs are kinda short, now that I'm looking at it. Like, the longest arc in the series I could probably think of, there's only 3. It's the Control Devil arc, the International Assassins arc, and the Katana arc. And even then, they're, like, all evenly up to 18 chapters long. Those are, like, the 3 longest arcs in the series. So, it really all depends. Again, I would say go up to the Control Devil arc. Control Devil arc. Go up to the Bomb Girl arc. And that's all you need. That's all you need is to go up to there, personally. Go up to there for season 1, and then for season 2, just finish up part 1. There's another way you could do this too. Let's say you do a season 1 and you do like 50 episodes, which is unheard of. If you do 50 episodes and those 50 episodes are all dedicated to the safety commission arc, the entirety of the safety commission arc, by the way, public safety saga, then sure. But if it's just 25 episodes, again, I would say just cover up to the Bomb Girl arc, and that would be it. But those are just my expectations for the anime. Curious about the opening, curious about the music we're gonna have. I'm curious about the voice choices too, because I think we're less than a few months away and we've got nothing on Chainsaw Man. So either we're gonna get a delay on the anime, which at this point is kind of possible, or they want to hold it off until like when part 2 drops here in less than a couple days. It all depends. And speaking of part 2, let's dive into that. Let's dive into part 2 because I'm gonna just say this right now. What I'm looking forward to the most for part 2, and I've kind of briefly touched on this, Nayuta. Her being in the story has me curious. Given the ending of the manga, and that dynamic with Denji, I think is going to be one of the more fascinating elements here because, like I said, who Denji is at the beginning of part 1, and who he comes at the end of part 2. He lives alone in Chainsaw Man at the very start. By the end, he's given the opportunity to raise a little girl who is the new control devil. And he's gonna ultimately gonna be the big brother fatherly figure to Nayuta and to make sure she doesn't end up on the same path as Makima. And to see what that's gonna be like, I think, is what a lot of people, myself included, are really looking forward to. That being said, though, given the promotional image we got for Chainsaw Man Part 2, we see this character who I'm not gonna say, I can't say for sure is Nayuta. It's either Nayuta or it's Koben. It's one of the two. But I did see the promotional image. I did see the chainsaw, and the only other person I saw with the chainsaw in a promotional image was Denji. So if that's Nayuta, I think what we're gonna get into with part 2 is a Tokiguri situation where we're focused on, in this case, for Tokyo, we had Kaneki and then we had Heise. We focused on Heise for like a huge port, not a huge portion, but for like a significant portion of Tokyo Re. I think we're gonna get a situation like that here, where whoever this character is we're seeing in the promotional image is going to be the focus of Chainsaw Man Part 2. And then we're going to slowly seep into other characters like Kobeni, like Kisame, especially characters like Power. Whether Reze returns or not, we have no idea. But and especially Denji, it could be a story where we are focusing on Denji. It might just be a while before we get him. I'll even say this. My theory is the character we're seeing in the promotional image. Could it be Nayuta? Yeah. But my thing is, what if we're just focusing on this new character as like the initial arc for part two? We're starting things up with Chainsaw Man Part 2, with this character, and through this new character, we're going to get reintroduced to everyone. Another great example I could think of is Pokemon Adventures. Think back to Yellow. We go to Yellow, and then that's how we get reintroduced to all these other characters. It can be very much like that too. It really all depends. But I think personally, we're probably going to get Nayuta as that character, or Kobeni. Those are the two characters I'm willing to put my bet on as to who that person is in the promotional image. Though if it's Kobeni, I'm curious how we go from the end of part one of Chainsaw Man to getting her there. But I'm more inclined to say that's Nayuta above. Actually, let me double check because Nayuta's right here. So let's look up Chainsaw Man Part 2 for a second. Just that promotional image. So if we're viewing that image just by itself, it's a new character. And then let's take a look at Nayuta for just one quick second. And just do a side by side comparison. And I know Nayuta's based off that one shot that Fujimoto did with Kenji. So there could definitely be some parallels there too. Well, let's see, we have Nayuta, and then we have this new character here that we got in the promotional image of Chainsaw Man. So it's nearly similar. I want to say it's nearly identical. Nearly. It's got the same jaw like they both have similar jaw lines and whatnot. Some could even say this kind of looks like Eri from Goodbye Eri. But I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. The only thing we know for sure, based on this, they're in a school uniform. So we already know based on that the second saga is going to be called the Academy Saga. So we're going to be focusing a lot on the school aspect. Which again, right now, as people go on 50-50, I was like, all right, what are we going to do here for the story? Because we didn't really focus a lot on the school except for that small portion, that small couple chapters on Chainsaw Man. So it being that, and the fact that we are seeing a chainsaw is already kind of telling me, I think we're still probably going to have similar aspects to part one. There's going to be some things that are be different, obviously, since it's going to be in Jump Plus. But I am curious, to say the least. We have a headless chicken, and that could reference anything. It could be that chicken could be similar to what Pochito was to Denji. So it could be kind of this chicken could be connected to this new female character we're seeing here in the promotional image. But outside of that, I think that's all I can really say when it comes to Chainsaw Man with the manga, with my favorite characters, favorite thoughts, favorite moments, favorite arcs. expectations on the anime, and then, like, my expectations for part 2. As a whole, I'll say this, when it comes to my overall rating on the manga, I know that's what everyone's probably curious about. It's like, if Lucky T's talking about this, he has to give us at least his rating on the whole manga just in general. Well, if we're just specifically talking about part 1 of Chainsaw Man, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's an amazing series. It's an amazing series. I do recommend people to check it out. It might not be everyone's cup of tea because there are some things Chainsaw Man does in the story that's kind of not exactly within the standard uh shonen genre tropes that you would see. It takes some interesting turns, if you will. And again, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think people will come out and appreciating what Tatsuki Fujimoto has done, especially coming out from Goodbye Eri and then, Look Back, which, if anyone's curious about this, Look Back is coming out October, I think. The one shot that Fujimoto did. I think this is releasing that here soon. Let me double check. I want to say it's October, but it could be September too. But since I am your manga analyst here, I can look that up real quick and you know be your informer on that. So make this like the last thing I do before I actually head out because I do gotta head out here soon. Take care of a few things. But let's see. It has to be October. I'm pretty certain it's October. Is Lucky Chi accurate on October as the date? Maybe I'll have to Google it. Let's see. Yep, it's going to be out on September 20th. Wow, that's like less than 2 months. And that's something I actually can't wait to pick up. I'm actually really looking forward to picking that up. But at this point, I'm kind of rambling on you guys. Again, Chainsaw Man, overall rating, it's amazing. Got some great characters, really interesting characters. Story's far from finished. And you bet when the first chapter comes out of part 2, expect a live stream discussion. You are going to get a live stream discussion on Chainsaw Man Part 2 when the chapter drops. Whether it's tomorrow or whether it comes out on the 13th, it will be Wednesday. But aside from that, you guys, that's pretty much it. I'm Lucky Chi 7. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for future Chainsaw Man content. And I will catch you guys next time. Peace.